Alright, welcome back to round 3. So we've got James Meany playing Storm versus Brian Arson playing Mud.
Now these are some very fun lists. We've got all sorts of artifacts in this Forge Master list. 4 Worm Coil Engine, 4 Metalworker, 4 Lodestone Golem, Sundering Titan, and Blightsteel at the top. Very fun plays.
Spinovish Saw.
Yeah, we've got Lightning Greaves just to go over the top and make those guys hasty. Yeah, there's a lot of power there. And in the sideboard, we've got some Duplicants, Edge Champion, some Mindslaver. I mean, this is just a throwback. This is a lot of fun.
Over on the other side of the table, we have a Storm list playing Goblin Welder, Singleton Goblin Welder, which is pretty cool. Besides that, anything out of the ordinary?
Oh, he's got a Transmute artifact in there, Inkwell Leviathan, some very unusual choices, very creative. Lion's Eye Diamond. Not a lot of cards that you see kind of together here. We've got Mind's Desire. Very fun. I mean, 4 Force of Will to be able to push it all through. It's the glue of the format. Certainly would hold a deck like this together. Time Twister. This is like all of the most powerful cards just crammed into one crazy list. He's got Time Vault and Tendrils of Agony, Memory Jar. So this thing could do anything. I mean, 2 Flusterstorms. You know, just some really interesting stuff. I mean, with Goblin Welder, you could potentially recur Memory Jar and draw like 14 cards in a turn. So
wow.
This is really
So instead
really
of Storm, he should just call this deck Combo.
Yeah, this is just all the combos.
It's just vintage combo.
Yeah, really fun. Lion's Eye Diamond in there as well. Yeah, he's got a couple of Hercule's Recall. That's good in a deck like this because it's able to disrupt the opponent as well as create a massive amount of storm or mana.
Yep.
So yeah, this could go in any direction. Let's see what happens. This is really fun. We got a Ruby and a Lotus Petal into Goblin Welder.
Turn 1 Welder.
So, and that in the short term, that can actually exchange that Ruby for the Lotus Petal, so he could have as much as 3 mana if he wants to go that way with kind of the small ball kind of move.
Welder working well with the Lion's Eye Diamond too.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a lot of potential here. Welder could do a lot. And looking at this Worm Coil Engine list that Brian's running, he's going to be able to out-Goblin Welder him.
Oh, yeah.
Because he has 4 Goblin Welders. So we'll see if that's actually going to work out. We've got a Cavern. So I'm imagining that's going to help for...
Naming Construct.
Is it naming Construct here? Do we have a...
Yeah, I believe it is, yes.
Construct is going to allow him to make all of his most scary monsters uncounterable. It could also give him the red he needs for Goblin Welder.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got Voltaic Key. All right.
Could also name Golem.
Yeah. Yeah, the Sundering Titan is a Golem now, right?
Yep.
And Blightsteel Colossus, I believe, is a Golem as well.
I think so, yeah.
Not questions that usually come up.
No. What's Blightsteel's creature type again?
All right. So we've got a mana vault. So lots of mana on the other side of the table here. With our cards combined, that Voltaic Key could really do some heavy-duty untapping. But so far, a little slow going in the early phase here. Wasteland.
Not relevant right now, but it's going to keep James off of his mana, off land drops anyway. Right now he's just got his Fragile Artifact mana.
Now I was on a really different list than what I usually play for this tournament, and I actually played against James in the first round. I got past him when I was able to Nature's Claim his Mock Sapphire after he had Vamp Tutored for Ancestral, leaving him with no blue. And then I Fate Sealed him away from blue for the rest of the game. That's the only reason I got by him. If he had drawn blue at any point, I would have been in really bad shape. He had Ancestral, Flusterstorm, Thirst for Knowledge, just so many good blue cards in his hand, and he just never got the blue mana. So we'll see if mana is an issue for him here. That is one of the dangers of engineering your own brew like this, is sometimes you get the mana base a little bit off, and you can drop games because of it. So we'll see how this holds up for him.
So Brian getting his so he must not have named Construct because he got his Metalworker countered even though he paid Cavernous Soul. Are we sure you named Construct? Or?
I have written down.
Oh,
Interesting.
So, yeah, it just happened. That's the disadvantage of being a less experienced player.
Yeah, casting Force of Will, targeting the Metalworker, a completely legal play. Of course, it wouldn't counter it. James would just be down the 2 cards.
Yep. Sometimes if you just believe hard enough that your Force of Will is going to work, it just works.
Yeah, that is interesting. Now with the current ruling on Cavern of Souls, I do believe
maybe he didn't announce that the mana was colored.
I think you get the benefit of the doubt now. I think that's how that actually works. But I believe Brian would have had to challenge it. I'm not entirely sure how the rules are set up with that. They've been really trying to make the game as friendly as possible with their attitude toward the new rules changes. So we've got some
7 mana going on.
Something big.
Worm coil.
Spine. Oh, is that a worm coil?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, worm coil. I thought it was the spine of Isha for a second there. I was excited to see that for the first time. And we've got a welder. All right.
Go ahead. Weld out that worm.
Yeah.
Do it.
Tons of guys.
I dare ya.
So as it turns out, this is probably the better scenario for Brian, getting that Force of Will out of James's hand so he can push through the worm coil, have an earlier presence, get the clock going even faster. Of course, he can weld it out, end step, keeping 6 power on board, and then bring it back in and just start turning either his dead artifacts on board or the tokens into more worm coils. He's got the other Goblin Welder to contend with, but if he does it end step and then untaps, he can always at least get 1 activation in there. So this will be very interesting.
So he vamp tutored, probably for a Black Lotus. Get the ball rolling, because he can tap, Black Lotus.
Yeah.
So he's going to make 3 mana off his mana vault, exchange it for a Black Lotus, Merchant Scroll for Ancestral with a blue floating.
I would have liked to seen more blue mana floating there. I think that's potentially a little loose if he had tapped either the Mana Vault or the Mox Pearl even.
Especially since he's going to exchange the Vault for the Lotus ultimately. I mean, that's what I would do anyway.
Well, we'll see what he draws. I mean, that's... Oh, we were... Go ahead and revise that a little bit.
Yep.
So we've got this will be Ancestral with the blue floating, which is the optimal line. And I agree with tapping the Mox Pearl here. It's entirely possible he won't use the Time Vault the Mana Vault this turn, I should say.
True.
And there's no reason to tap it down quite yet until he sees what he's going to be drawing.
Now, if he doesn't do something this turn, though, his Goblin Welder is going to get a whole lot worse because he does have a Lotus Petal in the graveyard.
That is true. It's a question of whether or not Brian's going to want to use his Welder to disrupt James or to just further his game plan of putting in lots of giant robots. So we've got Ponder. This is not as exciting after you've Ancestral. You'd kind of hope to draw into the goods and have something better to spend your blue mana on, but we'll see. I think I see a Force of Will in there.
Yeah, I don't know what the other 2 cards were.
Yeah, not the type of cards that you want to be seeing when you're behind. He's going to need some serious card drawing. Now, does he have a Necro in here too? I feel like he has like all of the good cards. He's got Wheel of Fortune, Windfall, Tinker, Time Twister, Demonic Tutor, Gifts Ungiven, which we've seen exiled.
I don't see a Necro.
I don't see a Necro, so there's no rituals. So he'd have a hard time getting to that triple black. Necro usually does hang out with the Dark Ritual. I mean, it's hard to get there without it.
So he exchanged the Lotus for the Mox Pearl, uncontested.
Let's see here.
Will.
Oh, that's some good cards.
Yep.
Lotus, Pearl, getting the extra value off of that, getting the Lotus Petal.
It's got 2 black floating.
Ancestral Vamp, so that I haven't been keeping track of Storm here, but this could certainly be.
Oh, let's see what he did.
Ancestral Vamp Tendrils, that's going to be the 3 there.
He played Lotus this turn, Sol Ring, Ancestral, Merchant Scroll, Ponder. So that's 5.
And then he just replayed 3 artifacts.
Replayed, so 6, 7, 8. So Vamp for Tendrils Vamp Ancestral Tendrils seems like it's going to get there.
Yeah, that is fun. Brassman, way back in the day, created a Gifts Ungiven deck based around abusing Goblin Welder. It was Severance Belcher. And Short Bus Severance Belcher is what they were calling it for Team Short Bus. And yeah, the founding idea was what happens when you have Welder and Lotus all the time. Like when you can just constantly weld and then crack Lotus, weld again, and just have all your Moxes doing triple time. It was an interesting list.
So he's deciding to play Memory Jar. And he's going to draw the Tendrils and 6 other cards. So Brian missed out on an opportunity to disrupt the mana. Probably didn't realize how important it was, or maybe he didn't realize that he can interact with his opponent's side of the table.
Well, was the Welder sick? I think.
Oh yeah, his Welder's sick. His Welder's sick.
I think it was off of that Mox Opal. So
you're absolutely right. Making his first land drop of the game.
It's about time.
Yeah.
Right before you kill your opponent, might as well.
You don't want to have to use that Black Lotus just in case.
So he could have Ancestraled right into the Tendrils and ended it. Instead, he opted to get the Jar out and jar into it. Do we see him vamp for Tendrils?
Yeah, well, he vamped, so we're hoping it's for Tendrils. But he's showing his opponent more things. He's kind of... This is one of those situations you were talking about earlier where when you have the kill, do you go as big as you can or as efficient as you can? Because you want to keep a lot of time on the clock.
Yeah, I like to have the muscle memory. The point that I was trying to make before in one of our earlier videos was if you have the muscle memory of this is the fastest line to get there, then when you're in those crucial points, like at the end of a big tournament, where you can just, with the smallest amount of time possible, end the game.
Yeah.
And instead of like all of a sudden being like, oh, trying to think it through and potentially making mistakes because you're playing faster than you normally would, if you can just get efficient at identifying the shortest line, and that's not necessarily the least complicated. I'm talking about like the physically least difficult to do. For example, if you could do something in shuffle 3 times, or if you could just do it with shuffling once, like that extra shuffling could make a huge difference.
Potentially 6 minutes. I mean, legally, you could get 6 minutes of shuffling.
Yeah,
shuffle twice.
At the end of a round, that would certainly be suspect. But even if it's only a couple of minutes, you're talking about a situation where maybe you have 5 minutes left in the round, and you're going to do some extra shuffling for no reason.
Yeah.
That could be the difference in between getting a draw or winning a match, or giving yourself enough time to have a game 3, which is just nothing but upside because you're playing a deck that can win in 5 turns, whereas your opponent might not be. Maybe you're up against something like Rug Delver, where they might be able to stop you, but even if they do, the best they can hope for is a draw. So tournament management is probably the biggest difference in between a good Magic player and somebody who actually wins tournaments. There's a very big difference. You can be the best player at your kitchen table, but once you start going to tournaments, it doesn't matter how good you are, how smart you are, if you're not familiar with the actual mechanisms of winning the tournament, it makes a big difference. Some of the stuff really easy to master, like when to draw, when not to draw, that's just simple math. But some of it actually does involve changing your play style slightly to suit tournaments.
Yeah, so Brian Arson probably, definitely bringing in Trinisphere, probably the 3 Revokers. I don't see him bringing in Blood Moons based on his opponent's mana base last game. But maybe he will.
Yeah, when your opponent beats you without dropping a land, Blood Moon's probably not the first thing that comes to mind, so I agree. He's probably going to leave that out. I would like to see Mindslaver come in. I would like to see what Brian does with the other side of the table. That would be a lot of fun. And his list is certainly designed to get that much mana out, so that would be really impressive.
Well, with 2 Goblin Welders and a Worm Coil engine, you can slave every turn, right?
Let's see here. So every time you activate, you're going to get, you're going to generate an extra
infinite
token. Slaver lock. Haven't seen that in like a decade. I don't even know. That would be amazing.
This deck is so cool.
That would be very fun. Now, he does have the Forge Master, too, and Mindslaver is probably the best single card he could hit outside of a Sundering Titan if James has a mana base that's like all dual lands. But Mindslaver is almost certainly going to be the best thing he could tutor up with that Forge Master.
Right? Sack your Lotus Petal, make Brian draw 3 cards off Ancestral. I don't know. Yawgmoth's Will, play out everything, make sure you have no hand, no mana. You can just really ruin... One Slaver activation should be enough to totally ruin somebody's day.
Yeah, especially when they're on a combo deck like this. It could get really bad. And if they start to mount up an offensive again, you could always just slave them again by welding it back in.
Yeah, it's like Tinker, find nothing. So on James's side of the table, he's bringing in his Rebuild, his Ancient Grudge, and do you think he's going to board into Leyline Helm? He's just got all the combo.
I mean, quite possibly, yeah. That's
big combo.
Yeah, well, so the Leyline isn't going to stop the Welders, so that's relevant. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that is a really strong chance that we're going to see that.
Just so much combo going on.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I cannot handle all this combo.
He did board into Leyline Helm versus me, which was very relevant. He actually opened up on double Leyline and kind of blanked my Nature's Claim. I was psyched to be able to game 3. I was like, oh, I've got the Nature's Claim, so I can break up the Leyline combo. And he opened up with double Leyline. I was like, oh, I guess I'm gonna have to win by randomly mana screwing him instead. So yeah, we'll see. I would definitely like to see the Slaver. And speaking of just ridiculous plays you can make, instead of Tinker for nothing, you Tinker for Memory Jar. Then you go to the end step after getting rid of all of the counters from their hand, like play a Mox, counter the Mox and stuff. And then you get to keep the 7. Like, could you crack Jar after the end step?
After the beginning of the end step?
Yeah, so you get the 7, then this guy goes back. So, well, actually, you wouldn't be able to get the counters out with the Mox, so it'd have to be like an instant. But even still, like, you're going to be able to probably get rid of the counters from their hand. And I don't even think Brian's list is that worried about counters. I mean, he's on the full boat of Cavern of Souls, right? Yeah, he's got 4 Cavern of Souls, so what's he gonna counter? If you actually press the issue.
Yeah, it just depends on how much you believe.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe Brian was kind of one-upping him there a little bit with being like, do you want to counter this?
Oh, yeah.
we don't really know without...
Yeah, because he had the worm in his hand.
Yeah, so he snuck that in. Now
the worm was just way more important.
Yeah, well, the Metalworker, the only purpose was to get the worm in at that point, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, that was... we will never know that.
Yep.
But yeah, we've got some really interesting plays that could come out of this. Lightning Greaves could.
This game's already been really interesting.
Lightning Greaves on a Metalworker. I mean, there's so many things that could happen so fast.
He's got 2 Voltaic keys so that he can have like ultimate mana generation off of either his Grim Monoliths or his Metalworkers. Multiple activations off of Koldatha Forge Master, Vigilant Worms, just all the goods. Yeah,
there's a lot of crazy interactions here. I mean, Chalice of the Void. I mean, it's got a bunch of disruption too. So you got Chalice and Lodestone. I mean, this can play similar to a traditional Workshop deck as well.
Mm-hmm. Is he?
He doesn't have Workshop in there, no.
Oh, this is unpowered.
Yeah.
Totally unpowered.
So a very creative choice for unpowered.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got the 4 City Traders, 4 Ancient Tombs, so he's able to power stuff out. Not quite as effectively as Workshops, but...
Looks like a Legacy deck.
It is very, very similar.
I mean, I think this actually could just be a Legacy deck. Like, you could just...
Yeah, I mean, Strip Mine is a upgrade, so that helps. But yeah, I think Strip Mine's the only card there.
Pretty cool.
And actually, in Legacy, you'd pick up extra Trinispheres, which could be really good.
Oh yeah, maybe I'll sleeve this up in my next Legacy event. It looks pretty fun.
Yeah, the Worm Coils are a legit problem versus all the aggro decks. I mean, if he was paired up against, a random bug list, I don't think they're going to be happy. We saw in previous round how they deal with a aggressive lifelinker, which was
not very well.
Really well. They pretty much just get beaten down, and every turn you just keep gaining life. So
yeah.
And right now, most of the artifact removal is leaning toward destroying the effect.
He started off the ley line before they resolved mulligans. Just that confident. It doesn't even matter what my hand is.
Alright, so Brian, perhaps with the added information that he could be facing down ley line helm.
Yeah, you don't really want to show the ley line before you resolve the mulligan.
Gotta slow it up just a little bit.
Yeah.
Could give your opponent the extra information.
Right, because now Brian could have had like a double goblin hand and
it just said, yeah, this isn't where I want to be. I'm not going to be able to weld.
Right.
So let's go and find something more effective. Yeah, that could have been a little costly. We'll see. There's a bunch of dead cards in James's list versus Brian. Flusterstorm not really going to do very much, but he does have two Urkel's Recall main deck, which will be very, very effective.
That's huge. That's one of those cards that can be proactive or reactive depending on your needs.
Yeah, and he runs Mind's Desire, so talk about getting extra value out of your Moxes when each one of those turn into one of the random bombs from your deck right off the top. I mean, this deck can really hit some powerful effects. Alright, so we do have the ley line.
Gotta keep. So, Brian leading off with Ancient Tomb.
With no follow-up. Yeah, so that is one of the big differences. If this was a workshop, you have to imagine he would have had a first turn play.
Yeah.
I do really like the Metalworker deck. On a casual level, I enjoy it. Oh, what do we got here? Tinker?
All the mana. Tinker for Inkwell.
No, it's got to be the Helm.
Oh, the Helm.
Yeah, you get the Helm here, and that'll close it out. That forces Brian to have one turn. Now, let me take a look at his list here. He doesn't have Revoker, so that's going to do it. He needs like Spine of Isha with 7 mana, which his list is not likely capable of.
No.
Certainly not based off of that first turn. I mean, if he had a Grim Monolith, it would have been out there.
Yeah.
A Grim Monolith plus Voltaic, he could make it happen. But let's see here. Does he have a Metalworker, which would have been on board?
4 mana.
I'm guessing it's just going to be...
Yeah, not going to do it.
So let's see here. There's Blightsteel Colossus. Yeah, that's not going to matter.
Nope.
He's going to get milled. Blightsteel is the only interaction here.
So does Blightsteel get shuffled back in? Even if
I believe Blightsteel does.
Even if it wouldn't go to the graveyard?
I believe the player who controls the card gets to make the call.
Oh.
So.
But Brian would have drawn Blightsteel anyways, and I don't think he had 7 cards in his hand. Oh, well, he was on the play and he mulliganed.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I'm going to have to look that up. I'm not positive how that is resolved. Either way, it wasn't going to result in a victory for Brian. Either the Blightsteel ends up in the deck or ends up in the graveyard. No matter what, it's going to be over the next turn. There's no way you can force a draw there. I'm thinking. I think what it actually is if you have 2 Blightsteels. I was having a discussion with Adrian Becker about this. I believe the current ruling, which doesn't make any sense, but it's just the way they've been running it, is if you have 2 Blightsteels, it would be a draw. Because you reveal a Blightsteel, it gets shuffled back in. Then you reveal another Blightsteel, gets shuffled back in. And that would just keep happening indefinitely. Which doesn't make any sense because you've definitely reached that previous point. Like, no matter how you do it, you've definitely been in that same exact situation before. That's a very minor complaint, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. So I think the Blightsteel would get exiled and Brian would be done if you have a single copy. Because there's 2 replacement effects, and you can't just keep choosing to put it back in and keep milling.
Okay. All right. Well, that was round 3, and we'll be off to the top 8 finals.